are back. Hopefully I sound better this week. New microphone. Tim, I sound good to you?
Oh yeah. Now we're on the radio, baby.
Okay, see, there we go. I got this old mic working. So finally had to go to plan B as far as the equipment goes. But we're good. We're handling.
Neither one of us knew that there was a MIDI control. You just told me about this.
Yeah.
I did not know. You've been sitting in front of Macs for 25 years. And neither one of us knew that there's this whole MIDI thing in there. So news to me.
It's weird. There's a MIDI controller. So figured that out and got it all working. So here we are. And we should talk first about the passings in the last week and a half. There were 4, the most momentous obviously being Olivia de Havilland. Well past 100. What was she? Almost 100. She just turned 104, 105, whatever it was. I lose track after 100.
Yeah, born in 1916 in Tokyo, Japan.
Isn't that crazy?
Olivia de Havilland. The whole thing there, her sister, all of that, and that.
And I'm Team Joan. I'm Team Joan. You know, I've always been Joan Fontaine. And Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland didn't speak for the last, gosh, what was it, like 50 years of their lives or 60 years of their lives, but. Joan Fontaine always used to joke. She will probably about Olivia. She will be furious if I die first because I did it first, or something to that effect. You know, she'll be furious.
Just like that Oscar.
Yeah.
So that's it. Anyway, I'd like to say the passing of an era, but in reality, most of that era had already passed. I think
that era passed 20 years ago. She was. Basically, when Katharine Hepburn died, that was sort of the end of that era. She was technically the last of the stars, but
Betty Davis among them, Joan Crawford among them. Those.
Yeah, they all kind of held on, and the directors too. Cooker and Capra. They all kind of held on into the 80s, but not long past. And Olivia de Havilland was the exception. She just stuck around. I mean, if there's people have been talking about their favorite Olivia de Havilland films, and Little Foxes always shows up there. I'm going to say Snake Pit.
Oh, yeah, very, very good, sir.
Just because I like movies about insane asylums. She's really, really good in it. She could have hammed it up and just played crazy, but she doesn't. She's really. We also lost Alan Parker.
Oh man, we had an interesting conversation about Alan.
We were having a really interesting conversation online, especially with Ray. But let's weigh in, because Mississippi Burning is the film that always comes up, because that was his last best chance at winning an Oscar. And when everybody kind of felt like, here it is, a civil rights era movie. It's got its conscience and it wears it on its sleeve and it's stylish. And then people came out and said,
me being one of them.
Yeah. You got a couple of you got Hoover's FBI as the heroes in this film. That's not quite how things unspooled. And next thing you know, everybody turned around. They ran the other direction, and Rain Man won Best Picture.
Yeah. Look, for one thing, I love Rain Man. We were talking about that a little bit too. Tom Cruise's performance in Rain Man has been to my mind, one of the greatest performances on screen of my era as a film critic. I think he's just extraordinary. It's funny because people always talked about Dustin Hoffman's performance, but of course, Dustin was doing that cheaty thing. I'm sorry, I can play Rain Man. So if I can play it, it ain't acting. But I couldn't do what Tom Cruise did in that movie. But nevertheless, Mississippi Burning, of course, and of course, there is an issue. And even what are we talking about now? This is 1990. What that we're talking about?
Oh boy, that was not 1990.
90. This is 1990. We're talking about.
We're talking about 88.
88. So more than 30 years ago. And Alan Parker, of course, not being from America, and filtering that civil rights movement, and ultimately, black folks, generally speaking, looked at that movie and what I remember calling it great filmmaking, but wrong filmmaking. That Alan made not a bad movie, he made the wrong movie. Because if we're talking about the civil rights era, and Rob Reiner would do it too. A few years later, what was the one? You know, the one that Rob made with.
Oh yeah.
With Alec Baldwin and Whoopi Goldberg about the killing of Medgar Evers, where you take this thing, that happened in the black community during the civil rights era, and you make a movie about the angst of some white dudes. As they deal with your Medgar Evers is dead, but we've made a movie about Alec Baldwin and how he feels. And then we have J. Edgar Hoover's FBI agents with Willem Dafoe, Gene Hackman,
Willem Dafoe,
roaming around the South diligently trying to solve these murders, which just did not happen. And so, but good filmmaking, yes. Wrong filmmaking is what I call that one. The Commitments, of course, is my favorite Alan Parker movie. God dang it, that's a good movie.
It's a great movie. I mean, Birdie, for me, it's probably between Birdie and Midnight Express. Midnight Express was a revelation to me. One of Danny Trejo's first movies.
Express.
My gosh, Midnight Express was a revelation. That was 1978, and Oliver Stone's screenplay. But that was one of those moments where it puts distance between. Alan Parker put distance between what he was doing with film and what had been happening, just 5-10 years earlier. And it was a revelation, the way that he edited that film, the music, the Giorgio Moroder music. It was a devastatingly different kind of film. And it changed me. I kind of position Alan Parker between Spielberg and Kubrick. And this was the comment I made to Ray, which is, to me, Alan Parker is Spielberg with grit or Kubrick with heart. Kind of sits between the two. There's an austerity, there's a toughness, there's a grit, but there's still heart. And, Spielberg is schmaltzy and Kubrick is cold as ice. And
no empathy, over there.
Alan Parker. And, I loved Evita.
Angel Heart. Oh my gosh.
Heart, which another one that got unfairly maligned.
It's because of the whole little thing with
with Mickey Rourke and the sex scene and whatever.
Yeah.
And Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro have been getting into it again. You've been following that?
No, I have not. Bring me up to date.
Rourke and Robert De Niro hate each other's guts. They are so antagonistic. It is unbelievable. And Mickey Rourke, it all goes back to that movie where Robert De Niro didn't want to actually talk to Mickey Rourke. He would do scenes with him and then leave. He just dissed him enormously. And Mickey Rourke has never forgiven him for that, for being just kind of a pop star. So recently, Mickey Rourke went on a Twitter tirade. I don't know if it was under the influence of anything or not, but he went on a Twitter tirade. He was laying into Robert De Niro like nobody's business. Oh, it was merciless. Just unrelenting, like, I'll meet you out on the street, you SOB. Come on, bring it. It was that kind of stuff. It was calling him out. It was crazy. So Angel Heart was real, man.
Oh, wow. And I don't know whether Robert was just, method acting, as he used to do back in the day. He used to do that crap back in the day. Method, he stay in that character forever. And Mickey was just affronted by that, wanted to pal around with Robert De Niro and.
Sure.
But Robert De Niro was the senior, relatively speaking, in 1986 or whenever they would have been making that movie. Robert De Niro was the senior actor. He was the senior figure. In there, so plus he was playing the devil, dude. I mean, come on, it has to be said.
Well,
who else did we
lost Wilford Brimley.
Oh, Wilford.
He was only 85. Now, and when you find that out, everybody starts doing their math, going, "Wait a minute, he was how the hell old was he in Cocoon? He's in his 50s. He looked like he's been 85 for the last 40 years."
Yeah, he was one of those guys that had that face.
He looked like a lady in The Natural.
Yeah, it was that in The Natural, and Wilford, to me, my favorite Wilford Brimley role is because he comes in at the end of Absence of Malice. And he just rolls into that movie, and he just eats the entire movie playing that old lawyer who's just going to sort all of this crap the hell out. You got Paul Newman in that scene, you got Sally Field in that scene, and Wilford just rolls in with that country drawl of his and eats that scene alive. He just takes the whole movie away from everybody in that scene.
It's funny. My wife knows a number of people that worked with him on movies, and another friend of mine was with the distribution company of one of the last little indies that he made. about 15, 16 years ago. And everyone said that Wilford Brimley was every bit the cantankerous curmudgeon in real life that he was with his characters. That's who he was on set, and everybody kind of kept their distance, and you were afraid of him. You were afraid of him because you didn't know if he was just going to pop off at you. You know, this line, who wrote this line? Why are you putting the camera there? I'm not going to do that. You find somebody else to do that. I'm not going to do. He was just that.
You're in the right. You're in the right. The Thing. He played the doctor in The Thing. People forget about that. So yeah, you know, Wilford Brimley. And what was it he used to sell? He used to sell. Something.
Medication.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And there are some really, really funny. If you go on YouTube, there are some really, really, really funny mashups where people have done that thing where they cut together pieces of his commercials to some song. Like somebody took all these pieces of Wilford Brimley and they did it to Ice Ice Baby. So it's Wilford Brimley basically doing Ice Ice Baby, except instead of saying Ice Ice Baby, he says diabetes. Diabetes. It's beyond hysterical. It is it's so off the chart funny. And then we lost
because we lost. We talk about people from that group because we lost Dennehy, Brian Dennehy, 2-3 weeks ago. I guess we lost Richard Farnsworth 4 or 5 years ago. Well, it actually might have been longer. It was right after the Straight Story.
Yeah.
All those. So again, these cats in that range there, 75 to 90, 95. That's a group. And we started to lose the British ones a while ago.
They drank a lot.
Yeah, Alan Bates and all those guys. They cheated. They cheated themselves.
Yeah.
They cheated themselves out of the last 15 years.
Yeah.
They
left the last third of their careers on the counter in a pub somewhere in Bristol. Anyway, and then we also lost an executive. Tom Pollock died on Saturday. Former head of Universal Studios, really a legendary executive and producer and attorney. Tom Pollock is the guy who actually got George Lucas his Star Wars merchandising deal. Everyone forgets that. We think of him as a producer and a studio executive, but as an attorney, he's the guy that wrote the contract that made George Lucas a billionaire off of toys.
Yeah.
I mean, had the foresight. Really, Tom Pollock, a giant who sadly, I think, retired from the business way too early. We could have really used him in the last 10, 15 years. That kind of savvy, pushing back on a lot of these really ill-advised corporate moves and whatnot. But anyway, there it is. So we're going to get into a few movies to recommend. There is not a lot of new stuff. We're going to mention one new movie, and then I'm going to roll through a bunch of classic stuff that we've got here, notably from Arrow and more from Kino. Kino is just giving us all kinds of great stuff. One of the Kino films has my mother-in-law in it. Rather prominently, I might add. So I'm going to give that a plug too. But first off, we're going to talk about Body Cam, which is a strange, curiously timely, such an odd movie, really well made, directed by Malik Vital. And written by Richmond Riddell and Nicholas McCarthy. This is a Paramount release. This is one of the last new films that Paramount actually got out. It didn't get into theaters, obviously. I covered this on Film Week. And, you think Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige, you got an Oscar nomination. Why are you showing up in some generic cop movie?
It's so odd.
It's so odd. And it turns out this is a supernatural movie. It's a supernatural horror film masquerading as a cop film, or vice versa. But it completely goes off the rails in kind of a good way when, she and her partner go out on a call and then suddenly some horrifying supernatural force murders her partner. And now we get into a story which is sort of like a supernatural variation on the George Floyd death in a very strange, timely way. This movie was made, keep in mind, probably end of last year. This just happens to be purely timely, and it was released before all of that stuff to streaming. So I don't want to give you any details on it, but Mary J. Blige is very good in it. The movie is, it's genre. It's genre. It is what it is. It's not going to, be memorable 6 months from now, but Mary J. Blige is terrific in it. And it does kind of plug into the zeitgeist in a very, very curious way. So that said, also some really, really good performances from the supporting cast in here, including Annika Noni Rose, who is almost unrecognizable. Matt Wolf and David Zayas. So check it out. I'm curious to see what Malik Vital does going forward. Got a lot of style, a lot of skill. We'll see if he stays in the genre realm or tries to do something a little bit more expansive. Okay, I'm going to hit these. Let's talk about the Criterion right now. Tim, we got a Criterion here. Bruce Lee, his greatest hits. People have been waiting for this for the longest time. Here's what you get. Criterion finally gave us a Bruce Lee box set with 4K digital restorations. This is Blu-ray, but they come from 4K digital restorations of The Way of the Dragon, Game of Fist of Fury, and The Big Boss. Basically, the first four biggies, everything that precedes and kind of lives in the immediate vicinity of Enter the Dragon without Enter the Dragon. There are so many extras on here, interviews, original footage of Bruce Lee. There's even the 1981 film Game of Death 2 included, which is terrible. But what's so interesting on this especially is the 1973 Bruce Lee, the Man, the Legend, and Bruce Lee in his own words documentaries from 1998, here's what the advantage of this. It's not just the films. You get a complete portrait of who Bruce Lee was, what his philosophy was of life, of fighting, of martial arts, all that stuff. And you realize that Bruce Lee, and we've talked about this before, Bruce Lee was the first major crossover artist, period, in music, movies, entertainment, anything. He was the first guy. He was the first artist who transcended nation of origin, race, language. He was popular in Asia. He was popular in the Middle East. He was popular in Europe. He was popular in the United States. White audiences flocked to see his movies. Asian audiences flocked. Black audiences made him a god. Hispanic audiences flocked to see him. He broke down barriers that nobody else has really been able to break down since. What makes Bruce Lee so special?
Well, at the center of it, there's this nexus where you have the martial arts, obviously, but Bruce Lee was the epitome of cool. Bruce Lee was cool in the same way that Richard Roundtree was cool, in the same way that Ron O'Neal was cool, plus martial arts. He was a man's man, Bruce Lee, which we talk about the late 60s, early 70s, all of that, Bruce Lee. While at the same time, he was a ladies' man, Bruce Lee. So really, you looked at Bruce Lee and you just had it all. It was just all right there. There's a direct line between Bruce Lee and Rudy Ray Moore's Dolomite. Direct line between Bruce Lee and Jim. Jim Kelly. The direct lines are right there between these guys. Sometimes literally direct. they're there together. So that's what you get when you have Bruce Lee. And then there was that philosophy, particularly appeal to young folks of our age. Start talking about the late to early 70s. When we're 13, 14. I'm 13, 14 anyway. You're a little bit younger. And these guys and this philosophy that came from Bruce, sort of distilled for us. Was something that we could understand and deal with. Dude, I was a fake kung fu expert when I was 12 years old, and then I actually took some martial arts lessons.
I got into martial arts early on because of Bruce Lee. I made my own nunchakus. My mother thinking I was out of my mind, I went and took a couple of old broomsticks, just sawed them right off. And then I drilled holes in the ends of them. And then I got these eye screws and I'm pouring liquid concrete in there and I'm putting the eye screws in. And then I'm the bolt cutters, and I'm cutting up some chain, and I'm bending the chain. And here I am in the garage putting this thing together, and my mother's like, what are you doing? What is this? And then I start whipping those things around. She's like, okay, not in the house. I hit myself in the head with them and almost knocked myself out. So that's what Bruce Lee did to me.
Love it. Go Bruce.
All right. I'm going to hit some of these Arrow titles here real quickly. We've got 4 titles from Arrow Academy, which is their Criterion-y line, the more legit kind of stuff, not the exploitation stuff. And The Mad Fox is really, really interesting. This is a Japanese film by Tomu Uchida, and I am not familiar with Tomu Uchida, and I thought I knew all the great Japanese directors. And this is the first time this has ever been released outside of Japan. And it's really, really interesting. And I'm not sure why Uchida didn't become more famous outside of Japan. It doesn't make sense to me at all. But this is really a very, very interesting film. That's almost poetically mythical. It takes place in medieval Japan, and it's all about a prophecy by one of the shogun's astrologers. And it's a devastating prophecy. It's a forecast that threatens the realm, as it were. And it's about what that does to people. And it's really interesting because you look at it in a historical context with, anyone who might proclaim to be a seer or a prophet or whatever it might be, their forecasts, do they become self-fulfilling, or do they kind of create their own weather in many respects? It's a really, really interesting psychological film, and it takes some fascinating twists. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It has a great commentary by Japanese cinema scholar Jasper Sharp. And I really, really recommend this. This is really fascinating. It comes from the Toei library, and it's a beautiful, beautiful transfer.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film too. I mean, that period in Japan, but that's actually gorgeous. I've been watching the trailer here. It's just absolutely starkly beautiful.
I don't know why I've never heard of the film or Uchida before, but it's a wonderful get, and bravo to Arrow Academy for doing it. We also have America as Seen by a Frenchman, which is a film by Francois Reichenbach with a great score by Michel Legrand. And this comes at the end of the 1950s when French documentaries were, really kind of just a cool thing. And Francois Reichenbach adds to that by, he's a very famous guy in France, not necessarily known here. So he basically came to the United States, and he just traveled around for a year and a half. And this is the most unusual film that you could imagine, because it really is America as seen by a Frenchman who looks at us and just thinks, boy, you're nice people, but you're a little odd, aren't you?
Yeah, America is seen by a Frenchman in 1959, 1960. Yeah. So the America of 1959, 1960. So we have to think about that for a second. Yeah. So it's very interesting indeed.
Yeah, it's a good film. Not a lot by way of extras on it, but there's a little presentation by author Philip Kemp and some stills, but it is still really, really worth checking out. Also, Hiroshima, a film by Hideo Sekigawa, which I am loosely familiar with. This was made in 1953, and obviously it is it's based on on eyewitness accounts of Hiroshima, the dropping of the bomb, and many child survivors are involved in this, and it's loosely associated with a book and a couple other works that were written shortly thereafter. So, this was an academic production. It was produced by the Japanese Teachers Union, and what you have basically is almost, I don't want to call it a crowdsourced film. It's not. It is a legitimate document, but it really is. It brings it close in many respects in ways that the news and the newsreels don't. So really quite a vital film. Has a 73-minute documentary extra on it called Hiroshima and Nagasaki Download from 2011, which is a wonderful. Also has interviews with survivors on it, and definitely check it out. It's really good. It's a wonderful historical document. And then the last one here is Life is a Long Quiet River, one of the most beautiful French films of the last good grief. I mean, 40 years maybe. Really an absolutely terrific film. It's a just wicked dark comedy by Etienne Châtillier, who never made a better film. This is easily the best thing he ever did. And it's kind of a comedy of manners, a comedy of class manners, but it's dark. And it all centers around a baby switched at birth accident, which it winds up being just the most. This is just one of those bitter French comedies, one of those dark, bitter French comedies. Like if Buñuel were funnier, this might have been The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. Film were more of a biting satire. So that's kind of what this is. But it is a really good film. It's won a lot of great awards, and it's worth checking out. Life is a Long, Quiet River. Really, really a great film. On the exploitation end of things, we have a great boxed set here, as long as we're on Japanese films. Solid Metal Nightmares, the films of Shinya Tsukamoto. And Shinya Tsukamoto is one of the very, very best all-time genre filmmakers in Japan, mainly because of the films Tetsuo the Iron Man and Tetsuo 2 Body Hammer. If you've seen those, you know, oh wow, this guy has just a dark, psychotic, cyberpunk vision. He also made Bullet Ballet about 22 years ago, which is it is exactly that. It's a bullet ballet. It is operatic. It is violent. It's just absolutely insane. And all of that is included here, along with stuff like Kotoku, Vital, The Adventure of Denshu Kozu, Haze. I mean, it's really, really just a sensational box set. It really, really is. And a Snake of June is on here. You want to check this out. The Solid Metal Nightmares, the films of Shinya Tsukamoto, but mainly what you're seeing this for are the four great films, Tetsuo and Tetsuo 2, Tokyo Fist, and Bullet Ballet. Those are the four that make this set an absolute must-own. Zombie for Sale is a little bit insane. This is It is. I mean, like, I don't know what it is with Koreans and zombies, but, we've had, like, Train to Busan. The sequel's coming out soon, too, by the way.
Yeah.
The Train to Busan sequel coming out. Look, it is this is basically the story of a vegetarian zombie from Korea. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. It's from Mars. It is totally weird. But there it is. You know, it's all kinds of social commentary. Most Korean films tend to be really, really allegorical that way. And there it is.
Okja and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's all allegorical. Black Rainbows, Mike Hodges' film with Rosanna Arquette, Jason Robards, and Tom Hulse. That dates to, I think, the late 80s, right? Didn't he do this in the late 80s?
89, yeah. 88, 89, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
Mike Hodges, of course, really never made a better film than Flash Gordon. I know some people say Get Carter, but I'm a Flash Gordon fan. But nonetheless, he took a turn here into a supernatural thriller, and it's okay. Generally speaking, it has its chills and it's got its moments. And Rosanna Arquette is fine, and Jason Robards kinds of phones it in, and Tom Hulse was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do after Amadeus.
Yeah.
We also have Bloodstone, which is a Nico Mastorakis production directed by Dwight Little. Nico Mastorakis made all kinds of crap, and this is another one of them, just mostly exploitation stuff. This is the only thing that is noteworthy about this is the first, and to my mind, the only English language role for superstar Rajni, the Indian star of many great insane Tamil movies that friends of mine all see on their opening day, otherwise known as Rajinikanth, but he is superstar Rajni to the tens and hundreds of millions of people that worship him, and he's in this, and he's not yet bald and old and fat, so
this is like late 80s, yeah.
Yeah, you can enjoy it, Bloodstone, but it's not a very good movie. It's just it's more sort of knockoff Indiana Jones stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last two here, Dream Demon director's cut. Not really a fan of this, but I know some people are. This is from 1988. Yeah. Kind of a mid-level supernatural thriller at the time. Has tons and tons of extras and interviews with people from the cast and the filmmakers and the producers. It's all loaded up with stuff. Has a cult following. I don't know. It's not really one of my favorite things, but it's
young Timothy Spall is in that movie, dude.
It's a British genre film, so I guess that makes it more respectable. Gothic too. Timothy Spall hammers his hand on a nail in Gothic. It's he's made some weird stuff. And then the last one, back to our Japanese exploitation, is Inferno of Torture. You gotta love those Japanese titles. Teruo Ishii made Inferno of Torture. And this also is from late 60s, I think it was?
68, 69, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, he made a lot of really, really twisted kind of S&M-y horror, sexualized things. Yeah. And this is another one of them. It's exactly right along the lines of everything that he's done. It's nude women and tattoos and torture and sex. And that's all you need.
Geisha girls and little outfits. Yeah, that's what he did. That's his style.
So anyway, if you like that deal, if you know who Teruo Ishii was, then you'll probably love the film. If you don't, honestly, I highly advise you not get into it. And then before we get into a little bit of television, I'm going to just mention some Kino titles here. We got 3 great Kino box sets. Carole Lombard Collection number 1. The Audie Murphy collection and the Tony Curtis collection. These will keep you going as long as lockdown and quarantine are still putting a crimp in your style. No Man of Her Own, Man of the World, and Fast and Loose are the 3 films from the Carole Lombard collection. Carole Lombard, one of the great beauties of all time, one of the great ladies. Oftentimes took too much, perhaps, of a second. Kind of pulled up the rear with a lot of her leading men. She was, with Clark Gable, and she was with William Powell, and, she let her leading men oftentimes lead the way, but by the end of the movie, you usually only wind up remembering Carole Lombard.
Yeah.
She was just luminous and extraordinary, and these are
a few of those movies, if I'm not mistaken, are pre-code.
They're all 3 pre-code.
They're all pre-code, and you want to see Carole Lombard and some of the costumes she wore in those pre-code movies. Basically, she wore a lot of slips, and they were just so sexy. Beautiful blonde, of course, with the hair, and they were just like I said, pre-code, and very often she would get wet. So Carole Lombard, yeah, it was great.
Audie Murphy, of course, was a World War II legend. He was a war hero who won the Medal of Honor, and then parlayed that into a movie in which he played himself, and parlayed that into being a Western actor.
Yeah, kind of, because Audie Murphy never could act, but okay.
He can't act worth a lick. But you know what? If you're a fan, you'll enjoy the movies. Yeah. No Name on the Bullet, Ride a Crooked Trail, and The Duel at Silver Creek. They are all strictly B movies starring a guy who had no business being in movies other than the fact that he was a war hero. So there's kind of a fascinating nostalgia about that. Tony Curtis, man, I'll tell you, I'm watching a lot of Tony Curtis movies again lately.
Yeah,
never got enough credit for being a great actor.
Oh, wonderful actor. He's funny. Tony.
He could do it.
The range, yeah.
Was amazing. He could do it all. He just didn't get enough credit. These are 3 films that are kind of minor Tony Curtis films, but, I'll tell you, he's great in all of them. The Perfect Furlough, The Great Impostor, and 40 Pounds of Trouble. They are a lot of fun, all 3 of them. And 40 Pounds of Trouble, which is one of those kind of wacky screwball comedy, family comedies where, it's the little girl is the 40 Pounds of Trouble, and the little girl is really the thing you're looking at. But I'll tell you, Tony Curtis and Suzanne Plachette, that's a great pair.
That's a great pair.
That's a great pair.
Tony was one of those actors for when he was very young. He was ridiculously beautiful, of course.
Yeah.
Him, Cary Grant. But for him, it actually kind of got in the way of his career a little bit, despite the fact that he was doing good work. He was a pretty boy. Yeah. And then a little bit later, when when that sort of went away, we started to pay a little bit more attention. Now he also always had that. I want to say accent. What was that? What was Tony? Was that Brooklyn? Was that the Bronx?
It was sort of all of the above. It was sort of all of the above.
Yeah,
tough guy.
And I guess that Bronx is just born in 1925 in the Bronx, New York, and that was always there in his voice. So if you're watching Spartacus and you hear Tony Curtis speaking, with that ever so slightly Bronxian thing. That could be distracting, but when it was correct for a film, it was a wonderful thing. And when he would get rid of it altogether, as he did in that Sidney Poitier movie, where they're, the one running around, and he has that Southern accent. Then that's when you knew Tony Curtis could actually act, and he was
so
really,
good.
really good. Love Tony Curtis.
So good. Well, let's do some TV. Let's bounce into a little bit of TV, and then we'll come back to the other movies later.
All right, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to start with the incredibly obvious, because I did not realize that South Park it's in its 24th season. We have here the 23rd season of South Park. And man, I can remember when
that's amazing. It's
just astounding. It's gonna end up being like the Flintstones or something. But I can remember that VHS videotape was floating around. The one set doing Christmas with it was just, and people would have 15th generation copies of that VHS that this was like 1996, 97 when that was passing around. And here we are, 23, 24 seasons later. So anyway, is there anything that these guys can actually put on, and to be honest with you guys, I quit watching South Park 10 years ago. I don't actually watch South Park anymore. Is there anything that these guys can put on that season 23 that people haven't already experienced, or is it
not really? I still recommend the audio commentaries from the first the censored audio commentaries they did when they first released it to DVD. Yeah, that's the funny stuff. That's the really great stuff. But there's just nothing left to say anymore. The shows push every button imaginable. What are you going to do on a commentary?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the South Park movie, and then of course they did that sort of Team America thing that they did with the with the puppets or whatever they were, but really not a lot by way of production and feature film territory, out of Trey and Matt. I just thought there would have been more like a Seth, what's his name kind of thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, Seth MacFarlane. Yeah. I expect them to do more, but I guess they just put it all on. I mean, there are commentaries on all the episodes, but they're not. It's a little dry at this point. But I'll tell you, man, they keep it going. And I think it was Mark. Mark knows one of the producers or one of the former producers, and they crank those things out. I mean, if something happens on Monday, they will have a full South Park episode by the following Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Particularly if you consider how the technology has changed since 1997, 96, 97. What we do, I mean, a lot of that was, it was like literally hand drawn back then, and then to the extent that there was any computer technology applied to it at all, nothing like what we do today. What we do today, I mean, it's fairly simple animation, but that animation added to today's technology, I'm not surprised that they can. This is mostly about the voices, isn't it? It's mostly about the voices.
It's entirely.
There's a whole lot of NCIS business here. So you got NCIS season 17, you got NCIS New Orleans season 6, NCIS Los Angeles season 11. Dude, the damn NCISs. Who would have thunk?
I am pulling them all out here.
There they all are.
Yeah, See, NCIS is this is kind of what we get from CSI, right? CSI started this, and then Dick Wolf said, "Hey, I could do that," and then he gave us Law and Order, like 20 of them, and then we have the Chicago shows. But NCIS really has done a very, very good job of keeping it going as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of astonishing, and I guess the lesson is that audiences like the universe of a lot of these shows. They like what it does. They like what it creates for them, and they get the right actors in it. Now, of the three, which do you think actually works? Do you think all three of them work? Do none of them work? There's only one, two. How do you rank them?
Well, the original NCIS was the one that I paid the most attention to. I don't know that I ever bought NCIS New Orleans with Scott Bakula and all these folks walking around doing these fake Southern accents, except for Lucas, what's his name, who was actually from down south, so he sounded real. But everybody else had to sort of like engage in being from New Orleans, and that always sort of distracted me. Our buddy Sherman I think Sherman's done all of them, but he definitely did an NCIS Los Angeles not too terribly long ago. But he didn't have to do the accent because his character was from L.A. And then, of course, he did an NCIS Los Angeles. That's the one with LL Cool J. And It's been around forever. I think that one lives in a world that I buy the most. I buy that world the most.
I think the one. I mean, look, I like Mark Harmon. I've always liked Mark Harmon, but I never really got into NCIS. It was sort of like, okay, I might watch an episode or two because I like Mark Harmon, but it never really hooked me. But I agree. I think where it really, really comes together is somebody had the very smart idea. Let's put Chris O'Donnell and LL Cool J together as a team.
Yeah.
Let's make that a TV buddy cop thing. And it works.
Oh, yeah.
It really works. And, I was never a Chris O'Donnell fan before. I was always an LL Cool J fan, but always felt like they never found something for him to do. Like, he showed up in Toys, the Barry Levinson Toys.
Oh,
he was terrible.
way back in 1990. Yeah, that was his first sort of thing.
Good. Yeah. It just wasn't good. You're like, oh, okay, that's just not working. And somehow this is it. They both have a groove. They have a great chemistry. The writing is solid. I think NCIS Los Angeles is the one where the idea really, really comes together.
Well, what's ironic is what they got going there. It's that original Lethal Weapon thing.
It is.
They're like the young, and it's funny because they're playing characters because LL is like this a fatherly character in that show. LL, the gangster rapper kind of guy. He's like the dad figure. Where Chris, who, if I'm not mistaken, has something like 15 kids. I'm talking about the actual Chris O'Donnell, right? He's like 15 kids. He's
a lot of kids.
And he's playing the loosey-goosey sort of Mel Gibson guy in this movie. I'm like, that's the way you do it. You play the guy that's opposite, relatively speaking, of who you have to walk around being in your real life. Yep. And then you have yourself some fun doing it. So that's all of them. A lot of stuff. So NCIS 17, season 17, NCIS Los Angeles season 11, New Orleans season 6. Is what we got here, right?
Next to no extras, just featurettes here and there, nothing really spectacular. But I'll tell you, it's quite a universe they created. Kudos to them. They did well.
My mother loved that stuff, yeah.
What about Hawaii Five-0, the final season? It's done, Tim. They finished it.
Dude, 10 seasons. 2010 is when the show kicked off, and I don't know whether I was a guest on the podcast or what back then, but I remember specifically saying, "What the hell would you do this for? Why are you messing with my Hawaii?" Because they started messing with Hawaii 5-0, and they started messing with Magnum PI, and dude, I was livid. I was just livid about all of it. But you know what? This is why I'm not a television executive. Because every one of those shows has been on for multiple seasons now. And people seem to love them. I don't think that they're loved by people from our generation. You and I grew up, Hawaii 5-0, Jack Lord. And I'm sorry, if unless you bring in Jack Lord back from the dead, I think he's dead. Is he dead? I hope he's dead. Did I kill him? Okay, good.
He's dead.
I didn't kill him. But unless you bring in Jack back, then no. I'm not watching Hawaii 5-0, and so I never did. So, that's what I could say about that.
Yeah. Well, as long as we're talking about old shows, I'm just gonna lay it right out here. I'm a Wonder Woman fan.
Oh, hell yeah.
Linda Carter, that's, all due respect to Gal Gadot, who is a terrific Wonder Woman, but Linda Carter will forever be Wonder Woman to me. Yeah. And you know what? Deborah Winger will forever be Wonder Woman's little sister.
Yeah. Because there she was. And let me tell you something too, because, people poke at folks about this. There was that wonderful movie about the guy with his wife and his girlfriend, the guy who created Wonder Woman. Yeah. And there's a movie. I think who was it?
It was Luke Evans played the guy. It was a year ago. I had to do that on Film Week. Yeah, it was a weird little polyamorous relationship that he had with a student and his wife, and they wound up living together in this weird polyamorous kind of, very shocking relationship for decades, like 20 some odd years, and that's sort of what the emphasis was. But the thing about the Luke Evans film, and I'll let you get back to it here in a second, is that you're watching this movie with Luke Evans and these two just screamingly attractive actresses, and they show you the actual photographs of the real guy and the real women, and you go, oh, they're just average and pudgy, and suddenly
This is not so hot anymore. It's all stopped being hot. But through the movie, it was also hot. But and out of that comes this character, Wonder Woman, who for me as a kid in the 70s. Now, I get a lot of folks who look at that and I say, you got Wonder Woman, you got particularly the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, with the bustier and the little tiny waist and the little outfit she's spinning around and all of that. And that's sexist. Let me tell you something. Wonder Woman invested me with a respect for women and their power in the mind of a 13-year-old boy, right? That I got from Wonder Woman and ISIS. Remember ISIS is the other Saturday morning?
Yep.
Those women, I get it. Yeah, they were sexy and everything, but you know what they were doing? Kicking ass and taking names. That's right. What they were doing. They were saving the United States of America. And notice that the show was called Wonder Woman. Lyle Wagner played the major, whatever his name was. On the show. And she, and her guys, she was his secretary. But in fact, she was the one who was always saving the day. So if you're a 13-year-old boy and you're watching this woman save the world, if not, America anyway, every Saturday morning, this is what I'm watching. And yeah, she's blazing hot too. I'm sorry, dude, that played out in my life in other ways. To me, women were the folks who saved the world. Every Saturday morning.
That did not happen in the 1960s. This is a fundamental difference between the 60s and the 70s. If you grew up in the 60s, you grew up watching men save the world in westerns and in cop shows and whatever it was. You were watching Dragnet. You were watching the Wild Wild West. You were watching Bonanza.
Yeah. 1 Adam 12, all that stuff.
But what happens in the 70s primarily, yes, are three things: Wonder Woman and ISIS, and I'm going to throw a third in there, the Bionic Woman.
The Bionic Woman, and let's not forget about Charlie's Angels. That's about 1977.
Charlie's Angels, there you go. That's as well. Now, so it's and we grew up on all that stuff.
Yep,
it makes a difference. Well, Wonder Woman is out in a complete Blu-ray collection. All beautifully, newly remastered. I've been waiting for this for years. I've been looking at all my old DVDs for the longest time, and boy, they really did a great job putting remastering them on Blu-ray. They are just sparkling and colorful. The red, white, and blue in that fantastic credit sequence just all blows up on her costume. It just blows up, and I'm not kidding you. Deborah Winger as Drusilla is a hilarious Wonder Woman's kid sister. She's a little pudgy, she's a little clumsy, but she knows how to spin around and get the outfit on. And that is just an absolutely terrific kind of a cameo. It launched her. And she would be nowhere without that. It's really, really terrific. You get a season 3 episode commentary by Linda Carter here, which is absolutely wonderful, as well as on the pilot. And 3 really, really cool featurettes that just give you all of basically making the points that Tim and I just made, which is, Wonder Woman as a feminist icon and how the show came together. Really, really great stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Wonder Woman, the complete collection from Warner Brothers in DC, newly remastered on Blu-ray. I cannot highly recommend this enough. It is just great. It's unfortunate, if this was supposed to coincide with the movie, the Wonder Woman 1984, that was supposed to come out, which is now delayed until the holidays, hopefully not longer. But, it's out. It's not coinciding with the movie, but it's out there, so make a go of it.
Man, you can still catch Linda Carter running around the current day Supergirl series. Yes. The singing thing too. Absolutely. Yeah. Jack Ryan season 2, man, is here. You and I, Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan, the perennial character from that series, which for you and I had been reading those books in the late 80s. So familiar with Tom Clancy, and I was kind of into that. So when they did that first film, which I guess is going to be The Hunt for Red October, is that right? Is that the first movie treatment? Right, Alec Baldwin and all that kind of Hunt for Red October. So this is going to be late, 89, 90, something like that, 30 years ago. Again, familiar with those books, thoroughly loved that movie, and then we watched that series over the next 30 years. Continually metamorphosized itself, and it gave us Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan. It gave us Ben Affleck as Jack Ryan. Yeah, second in one of those movies, Sum of All Fears, I think was that one. Yeah, and on and on, and then finally sort of made its way out of the feature film realm. Those kind of movies stopped getting made. Really, is what happened. But yet, it fixed itself up so that it could live inside the television world episodically. I would not have put John Krasinski.
Would not have been my first choice.
No. You know, he works through it. He pulls it off. Wendell Pierce in the series, and you know, and this is season 2. But no, just no, not in my head. The guy from what was it? The Office. He's one of those Office kids, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah. That's where he began, and he's been trying to shed the Office persona ever since.
Yeah, you know, and look, well, you know, directing those Quiet Place movies, but you know, I still cannot say that when I look at John Krasinski, I see this hero who saves the world. Now, the way he's chosen to play Jack Ryan, as opposed to the way Harrison Ford or even Alec Baldwin, for that matter, played him, they always played him as literally this nerd. And, you know, it was like the point of the thing. I'm just an analyst. You know, right. And then they would be pressed into having to, you know, grab the gun and do the thing. He doesn't really play him that way. He plays him as a guy who understands the gun and is perfectly happy and ready to go out there and you know, knock some guys out and kick ass, as you say, sort of changing that persona. They put anything on that box set, man?
No, not especially. It's kind of, you know, yeah, it's pretty much just dry, and it's the show, and you know, they got deleted scenes, and that's about it.
All right,
that's about it.
The Good Doctor, season 3. Again, you know, when this series first started, watching it, and I kind of thoroughly enjoyed it. I did. If you had asked me if it's going to hang around, you know, for 3 or 4 seasons, I've said to you, how far can you get with this guy? Because
this is based on a Korean soap opera, by the way. People forget that this is actually based on an adaptation of a Korean serialized drama, like a telenovela, and somehow they turned it into an ABC medical show.
Yeah, which people seem to like. I don't know. I don't know. I was good for about a half a season on it. They put anything on that box?
Nope. Deleted scenes and bloopers. That's it. Orange is the New Black, season 7. This is the final season. And, you know, I never quite got into this, but I think you're a bit more of a fan than I.
Well, you know, I did the performances and whatnot have been good. Lots of recognition from Emmys over the years from that. And that's the show that created some new stars. It was the sort of show because the way it was constructed, it had to put a diverse cast in that prison. You know, you couldn't have a prison full of, you know, dead-cops. You can't do that. So suddenly you have all of these people, and they got a chance to show what they could do. And a lot of those folks are, you know, they're working all over the place right now. So look, I tapped out on Orange is the New Black a couple of seasons ago, but I deeply appreciated what that showed. It did the same thing for women that Oz, if you recall Oz.
Sure, of course.
Did you know, was set in that prison probably 20 years ago now, was Oz. So Orange is the same kind of thing. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Ernie Hudson on Oz.
Yeah. Lock it down.
What else we got here? We got His Dark Materials. Did you watch His Dark Materials, the first season on HBO?
I did. It's, you know, I have a thing for sort of mystical, magical series that have at the center of them little girls, and particularly little girls who are on a mission to find their dad, which is what's going on in that series. She's looking for her dad, and you know, the interesting thing about that series, we think about something like you know, Tolkien's series, Lord of the Rings, all that, or even some of the other stuff that came out of the 30s and 40s. This series here isn't that old. No. And the guy who created it and wrote it was a junior high teacher. You know, who's, you know, and he's just sort of created all of this stuff. So it's sort of interesting, and I kind of dug it.
Who was supposed to do the big feature film of this? Was it Del Toro?
Yeah.
Was Del Toro wanting to do this? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, Guillermo Del Toro. That's exactly.
Yeah, and he was never able to kind of get it together. I don't know why, but it's anyway, HBO series. I don't know why Del Toro had such a hard time. Maybe it was just too expensive. Anyway,
it works best as a series on either way. 12 Monkeys, dude.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about 12 Monkeys, of course, I think about 1995 12 Monkeys, to me, one of the best time travel films ever conceived, based on the little French short film. What was his name?
Jett. Yeah, Chris Parker.
And all of that. And of course, there's this wonderful, on most of the DVDs for 12 Monkeys, you'll find this documentary. that goes behind the scenes of it.
Yeah.
And it's just a really, really fascinating watch of how that movie, and it's one of the examples where produced Terry Gilliam, of course.
Yeah.
It's one of the examples of where a producer saved a director, a filmmaker. It really shows you just have to watch the documentary. The producer of that movie saved Terry Gilliam from himself.
You were, of course, talking about Chuck Roven, who has produced all the Dark Knight films, and for whom friends of mine used to work, and who was married to Dawn Steele, the former head of Columbia Pictures before she passed from cancer. And Chuck Roven, who is all over The Hamster Factor. That's the documentary on there.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that before I even watched it. You said, watch it. Chuck Roven saves this movie from Terry Gilliam 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
And he does. It tells you what a producer can do when he's on his game and why a producer needs to be on top of the director.
Yeah. And Terry Gilliam was, very important, powerful director at that time, but Chuck Roven was just a little bit more powerful. And and when you have an inversion, sometimes that's when you have directors who do goofy shit, as Terry would go on to do several times later, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnell.
Yeah.
And all of that. Now, this, of course, is the television series.
Yeah.
12 Monkeys, which has, been around for a while now. I don't know. Again, look, I love that movie so much. I shied away from the series. The series more or less lives in the same space as the movie.
Yeah.
In terms of who the characters are and what they're doing. I don't know. I don't need this television series, but there it is.
My good friend Natalie, who was showrunner for a couple of seasons of Queen of the South, which we also are talking about today, was also showrunner for at least a couple of seasons of 12 Monkeys, I think. And so I'm partial to it. I have a bit of a conflict of interest. I like seeing friends from film school succeed, and so. Especially the women, because, it's harder for them. But, 12 Monkeys has its moments. I do think it's been a fascinating show. So anyway, that's the Blu-ray from Mill Creek of the complete series. And, does not really have a load of extras on it. It's got some, cast auditions, which are kind of interesting, but otherwise, it's just the show. And, it's amazing that a French short film made entirely with still images by an art house guy like Chris Marker winds up becoming a successful television series in the United States. It's a weird road.
Are you going to keep this Paddington Bear series for Hero, the Paddington Bear? So
Paddington, her first film actually was Paddington. We couldn't get her to sit for all of it. She was like 2 or something at the time. So it was a press screening, and they started late because some idiot was, late, and they held the film. And if they hadn't held it for him, her patience would not have worn out. So we would have been able to see the whole thing. Nonetheless, she responded pretty well to Paddington 2. And so I haven't shown her the animated Paddington yet. We'll see how that goes. But I am going to hold on to it and let her get a look at it. I didn't really have a great appreciation for Paddington. This is a very, very rudimentary animated show. It's not sophisticated. It goes, It's very obvious. It skews very young. But having seen the feature films, the live-action feature films, I think I have kind of a newfound appreciation for it. It certainly is a nice addition to the Warner Archive collection, and that's Paddington Bear, the complete series. It's worth checking out. I mean, if you have kids, if you have small kids, there's a lot of nice life lessons, and it's cute, but it definitely feels a little bit dated. But I guess it needs to be. The original books were written in the 1950s, so.
I like how quiet it is. It's such a quiet series.
Yeah.
As opposed to, almost any sort of contemporary animation where it's constant movement and sound.
Everything is so busy now.
Yeah.
It's true. All the Pixar stuff is really, really busy. I mean, I love it, but man, it never stops. We just watched Toy Story. We watched Toy Story 4 last night, and as much as I love it, it really is frenetic. That thing is just all over the place.
Yeah, things are always moving. Someone is always talking. Music is always playing. And usually all of them all at the same time, but certainly in some combination of, as opposed to that little Paddington series, there'll be 10, 15 second stretches where there'll just be a music cue and Paddington sort of walking along.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying anything. Anyway, yeah.
As long as we're shouting out to Natalie. Natalie did not have anything to do with Queen of the South 4th season, but I'll make a mention of it. That is out now as well, Queen of the South, the complete 4th season. She left after season 3. So this is the first season without Natalie. I wish I could say that it's still a good show. It does feel a little long in the tooth at this point. I got to be honest. It's most of the shows are all based on drug deals now, on drug cartels.
Narc and
they're all kind of starting to overlap in my head a little bit, and I don't know how much you can actually squeeze out of this, because Ozark is kind of taken over that space, but in a much more interesting way. Because it's not set specifically in the world of the drug cartel. That last 3rd season of Ozark kind of merges the Ozarks with Mexico, and it's very interesting. So, it doesn't leave a lot of space for these shows to necessarily do anything new, since they've already done everything they can do. That said, it makes a good effort, and it doesn't completely run aground. It's just more of the same. But there it is, Queen of the South 4th season, 13 episodes on 3 discs.
Good. Let's see, what else have we got here? Jett. Which Jett is this that we're talking about?
This is Carla Gugino's Jett, Natural Born Thief from Cinemax. Yeah, this is, I like Carla Gugino. I don't know why she went to television. She could have still had a really, really big film career, but I guess, television's a steadier paycheck. She plays a thief on this show, if anybody hasn't seen it. Cinemax doesn't get, the same traffic that HBO gets. But, it's kind of a modern film noir series, about a woman who, has to sort of result to being a super thief. It's got some good stuff on it. Giancarlo Esposito is very, very good, and but it's basically you're watching it for Carla Gugino, and I love her. I'd like to see her. I'd like to see her in movies again.
Yeah. Evil was a series that I actually watched the entire first season of. It was actually sort of interesting. So you have this guy who's a priest and this woman who's a psychiatrist, and the priest hires her to come work for him to discern whether or not people who seem to be possessed by demons are in fact possessed by demons, or engaged in some sort of a psychological break. Of course, as far as she's concerned, they're always involved in some sort of a psychological break, and which he's fine with. But then there are all kinds of strange things that happen. I like sort of a classic, the network television series sort of build, but the acting and the writing is so good. And what I like about it is that it never lets either side off the hook. It will not give in to him, this sort of Catholic priest, and it will not give in to her, this sort of pragmatic psychiatrist.
So here's my question. If Mike Coulter forever lives in my mind as Luke Cage, am I going to buy him as a priest?
To be honest, you will, because he's so soft spoken in this film. He's standing there with that Mike Coulter body. But he's so soft spoken and sweet in this movie that you kind of buy him as this one time priest who is still a true believer, but on working for the Catholic Church to do this kind of thing. So kind of interesting that series. I watched all of that, man.
The Sinner is in season 3. I don't think I ever really quite processed that Jessica Biel was behind this, and she's now a mom again. She and JT just had another kid, another little boy. So congratulations to them. But good on her. This has been a great kind of late career, late stage thing for Bill Pullman to do, who did a lot of movies and a lot of really fun stuff, and he's older now and more grizzled. So he gets to play a detective, as they all eventually do, and upstate New York detective. And it's all really about. Matt Bomer's in this too, and he's very, very good. But it really is. It's a Bill Pullman tour de force. You forget what a great actor. He can be so funny and he can be so presidential, but you forget that he's got a real edge to him as well, and does a really, really good job here. This is one of those fascinating, down the rabbit hole crime things. It's not quite True Detective, but it's not bad either. So The Sinner from Jessica Biel as executive producer. Season 3, still strong in season 3.
Interesting. Is this a film, The Room, that sort of horror drama. Is that movie about the people who move into this house and there's this room they go into and they get all these. That's the one. That's the one. That's kind of a creepy ass little movie. I talked about that movie on the radio
Shudder.
show.
It was from Shudder.
Not bad at all. That one.
Olga Kurylenko and Kevin Janssens. Yeah, it's spooky. Olga Kurylenko, I think, is a much better actress than she gets credit for. But yeah, that's what it is. They move into an old house and find this secret room with magic powers to sort of make their dreams come true and to materialize things. And next thing you know, careful what you wish for, because you might get. We all know how that turns out. But yeah, it's a creepy idea. Shudder original. Shudder's coming up with a lot of interesting stuff. Curb Your Enthusiasm, man, it just keeps clocking on. 10th season, and it's going into its season 11 now.
Yeah.
That's just amazing to me. Larry David, man, he's been a part of television history for like the last 30 years.
Oh, because you got all that Seinfeld.
And even before that, he was on Fridays.
Yeah.
He goes back to Fridays. I mean, he's just been, Larry David has somehow managed to stay at the top of his game on television for 3 decades, and not many people can say they've done that. I don't know anybody that's been able to do that. And Bill Cosby might be the only other person who ever managed that feat.
And it continues to be relevant all through the last political season. In any case, because some people just stumble into things, and Larry David playing Bernie Sanders
on SNL,
on all that SNL. I mean, it's like they just built that for him.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, season 10, it's more of the same. I mean, you got all the same people. Jeff Garland's losing a little bit of weight. That's nice to see. And Richard Lewis is still hanging in there. And Ted Danson and John Hamm and Vince Vaughn all kind of show up as guest stars. But otherwise, it's still the same show, and it's still sharp, and the writing is still good.
The Basketball Wives, I've never understood it, never got it. It makes no sense to me. I mean, it's like a sort of live story, or any of the wives. It doesn't have Basketball Wives, so you pick wives that you want. But there it is, Basketball Wives. People love these things, be they reality shows or constructed as narrative sort of shows. It doesn't make any difference. And what can I say? I can't do it. I just can't do it.
I kind of can't either, but you know what? I mean, the husbands make money playing basketball. They may as well do something.
Yeah.
They might as well parlay that into something. They're all gorgeous.
That's right. Look, most of these, first of all, these are the wives of basketball players whose careers have been over for like decades. And some of them, Shaquille O'Neal's wife and Doug. So it's like, basketball wives of lore. It's what this really is. But whatever. People love their soap operas, so what are you going to do?
So did you watch The Outsider on HBO, the Stephen King?
No, I missed that one.
So, I mean, this is really interesting, because it kind of went under the radar. We grew up in the era of the 80s when everything Stephen King was a movie, and it was every other month. It was just like they were making Stephen King stuff left and right and left and right. And now Stephen King, sort of apart from it, and Chapter 2, he's become kind of a TV guy. And, This is his novel, The Outsider, adapted to a suspense series, basically, which is all about the investigation into the murder of a boy who's found in the woods of Georgia, and Jason Bateman plays the high school teacher who is the prime suspect here, and he's really amazing. And I hadn't realized that he had done this somehow in between seasons of Ozark. And he's so different. I mean, Ozark is very Jason Bateman. It's very much him doing that understated thing that he does. Totally different gear here. He's really compelling. And Ben Mendelsohn, who usually plays the bad guy, plays the good guy here. He plays the detective. So it's a really kind of it's really interesting casting. And there is an additional twist to it here that I'm not going to tell you about. You got to watch it. But it's very, very good, and it might be the most interesting adaptation of Stephen King that I've seen since Cronenberg made The Dead Zone. It really is very compelling. It's really interestingly paced, and it's nearly 5-6 hours long, but it's really, really interesting. So they take their time and they really, really let it build. The Outsider, really a terrific Stephen King adaptation for HBO. Also want to make mention of some other stuff here that might just go under people's radars. This wacky thing, traditional Wild America duck hunting.
I was wondering what the hell that was.
Traditional Wild America duck hunting on the Santee Delta. This is not Duck Dynasty. These are actual guys who are duck hunters. They are not bearded and they're not making millions off of duck calls or whatever. They are just literally there in the Santee Delta in South Carolina, explaining to you how to do duck hunting. And it's really I got to be honest, because I was only accustomed to the Duck Dynasty guys, which is not about the duck or anything else. It's just all soap opera. There's a lot to duck hunting. These guys are conservationists. They will tell you exactly, we are not out here to just destroy the population. We're here to control the population, and this is what you do to take care of the Delta. And it's really quite interesting. It's a whole world and culture, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, besides that, duck is tasty.
I love duck. I got to be honest. How to Be a Gentleman, the complete series. Had not heard of this. This is a Paramount series, and it's basically a kind of a mismatched buddy thing of sorts. I don't know. Kevin Dillon's on it, and I always look at Kevin Dillon, and I always think you're the other Dillon. You're not Matt. But it's still basically the Odd Couple. That's what it is, and it's cute. It's okay. This is about 9 or 10 years old, from the era of 3-camera sitcoms when they were still just about everything on television. Now there's only a few of them left. Might come back someday. And then also, Russell Simmons' Higher Self series presents the History Makers collection. This is hosted by James Avery. Did you watch any of this, Tim?
A wee bit of it. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. The late James Avery. It played Uncle the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah.
There's a lot of really, really great stories here. These are basically the life stories of high-achieving, famous Black Americans in a whole. A lot of them entertainers, but all over the map. Dionne Warwick obviously is a big one, but you got David Dinkins and Maxine Waters and Jesse Jackson Jr. and Reverend Al Sharpton. They all show up on here. Harry Belafonte, Vernon Jordan is on here, and it's broken down into 3 different sections: success, faith, and courage. Actually, really, really a very, very interesting show. A lot of fascinating life stories and backgrounds, and it creates quite an interesting tapestry. I was most fascinated by Dr. Alvin F. Poussin.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Poussin. We used to show up with Bill Cosby a whole lot of times way back in the day. He popped up on Oprah quite a lot to discuss things relevant to child psychology and all that. Yeah,
fascinating guy. He shows up twice here under Success and Courage. So really, 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 really terrific. This is 3 discs, the History Makers collection, hosted by James Avery. Boy, and I'll tell you, Al Sharpton sure looks young in this.
Yeah, is that skinny Al Sharpton or fat Al Sharpton?
Yeah, kind of. It's the hair. I always try, not the weight.
Yeah, so. The hair, by the way, for people who don't know, that Al always points out, is his homage to James Brown, who was one of his mentors. So the hair is not actually an accident; it's very much on purpose. I'm doing a Frederick Douglass thing myself right about now.
So we've got 3 in the kind of animated and kid space right now. 2 animated, and then we also have The Birth of Ultraman, which is effectively and by the way, there is an Ultraman comic that is coming out from Marvel Comics next month. On the Birth of Ultraman, but this is the Rise of Ultraman, which was done. When was this made? I want to say like 10 years ago, but it might be longer. Anyway, you can never really tell. They all kind of look like they were made in the 70s. But you know what? I kind of feel like here we go. This was this also. You know what? This has an extra on it that I didn't watch. The Birth of Ultraman pre-premiere special from 1966. I got to watch that. I didn't.
Oh wow!
that. Yeah, that's great. Anyway, I mean, look, you can't go wrong with Ultraman. The birth of Ultraman is a whole lot of fun.
Oh, the live action Ultraman when I was a kid, late 60s, early 70s. It was. Every single one was the same. The light on his chest would start blinking, and he would have to fight. Will it go out before he can finish? Then he have to fly toward the sun to recharge. It was just all fantastic.
It's a thing. So the last two here, complete series of the Legion of Superheroes and the complete first and second seasons of Final Space. So Legion of Superheroes is DC stuff. Obviously, it's by the way, I forgot to mention, I did finally finish, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler. Turn it off for 30 seconds till I get out of this. I did finally watch the complete arc of across the Arrowverse of.
All of that. Yeah, the multiverse series.
I love that they ended it on Super Friends. I love the Super Friends homage at the end of it. That was a whole lot of fun. So anyway, I wish there was a little bit more of that in the animated Legion of Superheroes, the complete series, but there isn't. It's still fine, but I do feel like they're stretching some of the DC world, the DC Marvel, DC Comics world a little bit too thin on the animated thing. This is kind of a short-lived series, just as well. I think about 6 hours is about 5 hours is about all you can really squeeze out of it. The complete first and second seasons of Final Space is actually quite a lot of fun. We need more wacky space comedy. We need more stuff that feels like Family Guy and Simpsons in space, and that's a little bit of what's going on here. So hopefully we'll get more of this. I don't know if there's going to be a third season. I sure hope there will be. This definitely is definitely fills a void. In the couple minutes we have left, Tim, I want to make mention of some Kino stuff.
Yep.
Real quickly. Most notably, the wonderful movie, The Public Eye.
Oh, wow.
With Joe Pesci, which is so underrated. My mother-in-law has a wonderful, she was an extra in this, but she's like a featured extra. She's like
1992. That movie just really did not get the respect that it deserved back then. The critical sort of respect it deserved back then for a whole bunch of different reasons. But it's just really a sharp movie, Joe Pesci in that Howard Franklin film.
It's based loosely on the exploits of the photographer Ouija, who was a legendary freelance news photographer, crime photographer in the 1940s. And Joe Pesci plays lead. It's fictionalized, of course. It's a little bit of a film noir, Barbara Hershey, the femme fatale. But boy, what a stylish, beautiful movie. It's so well made. Howard Franklin, such a good director. I wish he were still doing a lot of stuff, primarily a Bill Murray team guy, but executive produced by Robert Zemeckis. Just a wonderful, wonderful movie. One of the best films of the 90s, so underrated. The Public Eye with Joe Pesci might be the best performance Joe Pesci has ever given. Sissy Spacek in Raggedy Man with Eric Roberts and Sam Shepard. This is from 1981. Also a really, really beautiful film. That I don't think gets enough credit. Directed by Jack Fisk, by the way. Yeah. Jack Fisk, legendary production designer and husband of Sissy Spacek. Still does all of Terrence Malick's movies. Worked with David Lynch for a very long time. Jack Fisk's sister was David Lynch's first wife. So that's how all that plugs together. But Jack Fisk directed Raggedy Man, did a beautiful job. I don't know why he doesn't direct anymore, but boy, what a lovely, lovely kind of rural poetry this is. It's Sissy Spacek as a young mother and trying to raise her sons, and then this man enters her life. It's a really, really great film. One of those great early 1980s films that we always kind of forget about.
Sam Shepard and Tracy Walter and just all of the young Henry Thomas.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It's good. And this has an audio commentary on it by Howard Berger and Nathaniel Thompson. Couple others here to make mention of. I'm going to pull out just these four, and we're going to go out on these four. First off, Diva by Jean-Jacques Benex, which is loaded with extras. This is one of the great French films of the 1980s. Also 1981 has an audio commentary by Benex, who is terrific. I have met Benex. His former agent is a friend of ours, and we actually spent a dinner at his house once. He knew I was a Benex fan, so he invited us over, and we sat there with Benex and his wife and just had a great conversation at dinner. One of the highlights of my life, having dinner private dinner with Jean-Jacques Benex, and he's a genius. He doesn't make enough movies, but that's his right. Loads of stuff on here. There's another audio commentary with film critic Simon Abrams. Vladimir Cosma, the composer, is interviewed. Tons and tons of interviews here with the actors and others. It's just loaded with extras. It is a fantastic film. It is a highly stylish film. It kind of reinvented French film in the 1980s, and there's just nothing like Diva. We also have Robert Duvall's Oscar-winning performance in Tender Mercies, directed by Horton Foote. I used to think this film was as slow as watching paint dry, and I kind of love it now.
Yeah. It's a beautiful movie, and illustrative because this is what, like the early '80s, '82, '83, something 83, like that. '83. Bruce Beresford, man, just wow. We forget about these people. He's from that era too, that Alan Parker era that we were talking about. He's one of those guys from that period too. Yep. Horton Foote, of course. The writer.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Lorenzo's Oil.
Wilford Brimley, of course, in that movie too.
True. Lorenzo's Oil. George Miller. Maybe the one time that George Miller didn't go full genre. George Miller has done animated films, Happy Feet, the Mad Max films, Witches of Eastwick, but he also made an incredibly moving movie in Lorenzo's Oil because he used to be a doctor, and he was motivated by the story of these parents who did what the medical establishment could not do, which was make progress in finding a cure for the bizarre, strange disease that is devastating their son. And Nick Nolte and Susan Sarandon play the parents. This movie just brings me to tears. It is so powerful. It is so devastatingly beautiful. And George Miller directs the hell out of it. This is one of the best films of the 90s. 1992 was a great year, and this is one of the best films of that year. I remember you and I just both loved this movie at the time, too.
Yeah. It's just a beautiful movie. Peter Ustinov, so the late Peter Ustinov. That's fantastic.
And then just the last two here, Cry Freedom, as long as we were talking about Mississippi Burning. Cry Freedom caught a lot of flack for some of the same things, which is that here's a movie ostensibly, this was Richard Attenborough's attempt to kind of get back in the Gandhi groove, and he wanted to tell the story of Stephen Biko, but it's not really the story of Stephen Biko. Stephen Biko was killed. Yeah. So this winds up being the story of Stephen Biko's friend, a journalist played by Kevin Kline, who has to escape. Who has to escape South Africa to bring the story of Stephen Biko to the world. Yeah. I don't necessarily have a problem with that story, but and I do love the film. I especially love the music. But as long as people know going in that it's not the story of Stephen Biko, it's the story of a guy bringing the story of Stephen Biko to the world, and it's sort of a one-note movie. Yeah, Stephen Biko played by Denzel Washington, relatively speaking, young Denzel Washington, probably coming off St. Elsewhere or something like that. This is his first big kind of starring thing that moved him from St. Elsewhere back into movies. Anyway, a movie I appreciate, but again, wonderful filmmaking, but you made the wrong movie. With the elements you had, you made the wrong movie. So I'm going to go out on this, Tim. The original, for a 4K restoration of the original 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea from 1916. Silent 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Really a shockingly good movie. 86 minutes long, gripping, has an audio commentary by Anthony Slide, film historian. This is another one from Kino, and a great new score by Orlando Perez Rosso. Just an utterly fascinating take of the story that is quite different from the Disney film, which I just watched yesterday with Hero. She was terrified of the giant squid, finally mustered up the courage to sit down. We watched it. She wound up loving it. And then she watched The Black Hole right afterwards, and not so much. But really, this is quite good. I had never seen this before. I obviously knew about it, so it's wonderful to see it kind of back to back with the Disney film. You realize how very, very different it is and how many different ways there are to do a telling of the story. But the production value at the time for 1916 really nailed it. They did a great job. This is a beautiful transfer, so good on everybody there. Good on Kino for bringing it to us. Universal's incredible 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea from 1916.
Yeah, not that long after Jules Verne would have written that story. Actually,
no, true. That would be that's like a modern novel at the time.
Yeah.
All right, well, that should do it for the next little while. We'll be back hopefully in a week or two, and with some other stuff. Tim, what do you got planned this week? Anything huge on your social calendar?
Well, you know what? I think I'm gonna sit here. When I'm not sitting here, I think I'm gonna sit over there, and then I'll probably move back to here. That's more or less what I'm gonna be doing. School actually starts back up for me. Teaching. I'll be teaching online. A course that starts on August 24th, and it looks like I have enough students signed up to. So I'll be teaching online a sort of Zoom course completely. I've always taught a little bit on Zoom, whatever. But it'll be the first time I've done it wholly and completely. So I'm sort of prepping for all of that to see what happens.
Great. Well, good luck with that. Hopefully we pull ourselves out of this sooner rather than later. It'll be good to see your face again, and it'd be good to get the shows back on a regular track again. But in the meantime, everybody stay safe. Follow whatever health and safety guidelines you've got going in your area, and we will see you guys next week.
Make the honky go.